Welcome to the 21st edition of the Tempo Storm Shadowverse Meta Snapshot. In the past month, we have seen decks rise and fall. Bike Dragon, the deck that once dominated the meta, fell rapidly as players learned to maneuver around its damage. Sanctuary Haven also became more popular over time thanks to being a strong counter to Bike Dragon. Meanwhile, Forestcraft decks have seen a shift from Acel Forest back to Loxus-themed builds. The most impactful change from the last month is the buff to Miser, Neighborhood Hero, and its Rapid Fire token. This caused a surge in Spell Boost Rune's power and popularity, kind of like a certain stock loved by retail traders in recent news. Other Runecraft decks also benefited from this development, but the power level of those decks are not high enough to make a similar impact. Before we continue with this month's Shadowverse Meta Snapshot, remember to like and subscribe to our Tempo Strategy YouTube channel for the latest decks and strategy content. Sometime during Acel Forest's rise to glory in this expansion, players began to rediscover Loxus Forest. After a recent patch, the deck became a lot more popular as a counter to Spell Boost Rune. Loxus Forest could be considered the natural evolution of Aggro Forest, taking a slower and more calculated approach in the early game to set up more powerful mid-game turns. While it has less burst potential than in the previous expansion, other decks in the meta cannot consistently clear Loxus Forest's wide boards while healing enough damage to survive its lethal mid-game. Coming in second in this month's Meta Snapshot is Spell Boost Rune. The buff to Miser helped Spell Boost Rune immensely. Access to multiple copies of a zero-cost Rapid Fire with Miser's Evolve effect brings the deck online a lot sooner than before, while also helping clear dangerous boards. The deck struggles against Loxus Forest and Sanctuary Haven, but is favorable against all other popular decks in the meta at the moment. In month 2 of the Eternal Awakening expansion, the list has been solved. Sanctuary Haven now plays Calm Featherfolk and Unicorn Altar, early game amulets that help trigger both effects of Major Prayers, and establishes a strong mid-game board with the help of Sanctuary. We're back to seeing 3 copies of Ra in the list, as you now lose more games by not drawing Ra at all than by drawing multiple copies, and because he contributes to pushing tempo in the mid-game. Holy Sanctuary is also back at 3 copies, and you can see 0 to 2 copies of 4-Pillar Tortoise in some lists to tutor it. These developments have made the deck a strong contender in the February meta. While Gremmery Shadow benefits from the increased popularity of Sanctuary Haven, it also suffers from the rapid growth of Spell Boost Rune and Loxus Forest. Despite all the turbulence in the Tier 1 rankings, Gremmery Shadow barely held onto its 3rd place spot with its solid foundations. Bike Dragon dropped all the way to the bottom of the tier list from the very top. Other archetypes have become more refined throughout the month and have also learned to handle the aggression of Bike Dragon a little better. Unfortunately for Bike Dragon, its game plan is rather flat and one-dimensional, and while the cards are very strong, the deck as a whole fails to scale as well as its competitors. Despite all of that, Bike Dragon is still a pretty powerful deck and can stand toe-to-toe with the rest of Tier 1, with the exception of Sanctuary Haven as the deck's Achilles heel. For our deck recommendations in the Shadowverse rotation format, Loxus Forest sits at the top of the current tier list with its solid matchups across the board, but Spell Boost Rune should also be considered. While the deck is one of the more challenging Tier 1 decks, it can be equally rewarding. A player can learn a lot about resource management by mastering the deck and become better players in the process. This may also be the last chance players get to enjoy Spell Boost Rune in its current iteration, as the core of the deck, such as Kuan and Demon Caller, will be rotating out soon along with the rest of the Ultimate Coliseum expansion. For those who wish to ladder in a more casual manner, Acel Forest and Gremmery Shadow are still solid decks that result in fast games and have a decent range of matchups across the board. In conclusion, while the meta can be considered stable, the various decks in Tier 1 are still in a very tight head-to-head race against each other. Our Tier 1 list ended up going through multiple revisions as decks evolved, and our panel of experts built a clearer picture of the meta. Take Spell Boost Rune for example. Players are still experimenting with different ratios of Vincent, Demon Caller, Kuan, and Fiery Embrace. Loxus Forest players may include Wolfrod to gain an edge in the Sanctuary Haven matchup, while Sanctuary Haven players may once again include cards such as Blind Justice to help clear giant Loxus boards. The mini expansion is due to shake things up further at the end of February. While the meta is arguably diverse with 5 classes being represented in Tier 1, the 3 classes that are left out are only represented in Tier 3. The mini expansion represents an opportunity to strengthen those classes to be on par with the current Tier 1 lists. Eternal Awakening has given rise to relatively new archetypes, such as Bike Dragon and Westwind Haven, but as the meta evolved and settled, familiar decks rose in popularity that were reinforced with new cards. Hopefully the mini expansion can set the foundation of newer playstyles to make a stronger impression. Be sure to keep an eye on the Tempo Storm website for the latest guides for both new players and veterans alike. We will have 2 reveals for the mini expansion later on this month. The 2021 Shadowverse Open season has also begun, so be sure to sign up for your chance to be a part of the 2021 2021 World Grand Prix. See you next month for the Tempo Storm Shadowverse Meta Snapshot of the Eternal Awakening mini expansion.